You're looking at my credit cards again, aren't you? Jennifer's hand froze inside my wallet. For half a second, maybe less, I saw something cross her face. Not guilt. Not embarrassment. Something colder. Strategic thinking. My name is Marcus. I'm 38 years old and I catch cybercriminals for a living. I've spent 14 years tracking digital thieves who think they're untouchable. Financial fraudsters, identity thieves, hackers who drain bank accounts from halfway across the world. I've seen every trick, every scheme, every clever little plan that desperate people come up with when they want money that isn't theirs. And my wife Jennifer had been going through my wallet every morning for the past 6 weeks. She looked up at me with that innocent smile she'd perfected over our 8 years together. Just grabbing some cash for groceries, babe. You know how the card readers at Whole Foods have been acting up lately. I knew exactly how the card readers at Whole Foods had been acting up. They hadn't been. I also knew she'd taken cash from my wallet yesterday. And the day before that. Small amounts. 20 here, 40 there. Testing boundaries. Seeing what I'd notice. If you're interested in stories about betrayal, deception, and how the truth always surfaces no matter how deep you bury it, hit that like button right now and subscribe. Every single day I bring you stories that will make you question everything you think you know about the people closest to you. Jennifer put my wallet back on the dresser, but the angle was wrong. 43 degrees instead of the perpendicular position I always left it in. Small detail. Meaningless to most people. But I'd spent 14 years in cybersecurity studying human behavior patterns, and small details were never meaningless. I'm going to meet Claire for coffee, she said, already heading toward the door. We're planning that charity thing for her church. Might be gone a few hours. Claire. Her college roommate who lived in Denver and hadn't visited Seattle in 3 years. I checked. The door closed behind her and I stood in our bedroom listening to her car start in the driveway. Our house in the Queen Anne neighborhood had cost us everything we'd saved, but Jennifer insisted we needed something that reflected our status. Status. That word had been appearing in her vocabulary more and more lately. I walked to my home office and sat down in front of the 3-monitor setup I used for security consulting. Pulled up the discrete monitoring software I'd installed on our home network 4 weeks ago. The same software I used to track corporate espionage for Fortune 500 companies. Jennifer thought she'd been clever, covering her tracks. She had no idea that every device connected to our Wi-Fi was feeding data directly to my monitoring system. Her laptop, her phone, her tablet. Every search, every website, every email. And what I discovered over the past month had turned my blood cold. Let me back up. Let me tell you how I got here. How a cybersecurity expert who spent his entire career catching thieves ended up married to one. I met Jennifer 9 years ago at a tech conference in San Francisco. I was giving a presentation on financial fraud detection systems. She was working as a marketing coordinator for a luxury travel agency, attending the conference to network with potential corporate clients. She approached me after my presentation. That was fascinating, she'd said. The way you track digital footprints, it's like you can see into people's minds just by watching their online behavior. I remember being flattered. She was beautiful, intelligent, genuinely interested in my work. We talked for 3 hours in the hotel bar. She asked detailed questions about security systems, encryption, how banks monitored suspicious transactions. I thought she was curious. Looking back, I was giving my future adversary a complete education in the systems she'd eventually try to exploit. We dated for a year. Long distance at first, she was based in Portland, I was in Seattle. Weekend visits, long phone calls, The kind of romance that feels more intense because of the distance. She seemed perfect. Supportive, ambitious, excited about building a life together. We got married in a small ceremony in the San Juan Islands. Nothing extravagant. My cybersecurity consulting salary was good, but not exceptional. Jennifer said she wanted something intimate anyway. Just close friends and family. That should have been my first warning sign. Because 6 months after the wedding, everything changed. It started when her friend Diane moved to Seattle. Diane had married a venture capitalist who'd made millions in the tech boom. They bought a waterfront mansion in Madison Park, drove matching Teslas, took monthly trips to Europe. Jennifer started comparing. Subtly at first. Comments about Diane's lifestyle, her opportunities, the restaurants she frequented. "We should try that place Diane mentioned," she'd say. Or, "Diane's in Paris again. Must be nice." I took on extra consulting work. Late nights helping startups build security infrastructure, weekend projects for small businesses worried about data breaches. The extra income helped, but couldn't close the gap between our comfortable middle-class life and Diane's luxury existence. Jennifer took a new job at an upscale travel agency downtown. Better commission structure, she said. Working with high-end clients who book first-class flights and 5-star accommodations. She said it would help with our finances. Her first paycheck from the new job was smaller than her last paycheck from the old one. When I asked about it, she had an explanation ready. Training period, reduced hours while she learned the system. It made sense. I trusted her. That was 8 months ago. 3 months ago, I noticed the first real warning sign. Jennifer started asking questions about my work again. Specific questions. How quickly do banks flag suspicious transactions? What dollar amount triggers automatic fraud alerts? How do international purchases get monitored? She framed it as professional curiosity. My clients ask me about travel security, she'd say. I want to give them accurate information about protecting their cards abroad. But I recognized the questions. They were the same questions financial criminals asked when they were planning fraud. The same reconnaissance I'd seen hundreds of times in my career. I should have confronted her then. But something stopped me. Part of me needed to know how far she'd go. Part of me hoped I was wrong, that my professional paranoia was bleeding into my personal life. That the woman I'd married wasn't really planning what my instincts told me she was planning. So I started monitoring instead of confronting. I installed network monitoring software on our home router. The same tools I used for corporate security audits. Every device on our network, every search query, every website visit, every app download, all of it feeding into logs that I reviewed each night after Jennifer went to bed. The first thing I discovered was the secret email account. Created 3 months earlier using a burner phone number I didn't recognize. The account name was generic, forgettable. But the emails inside were anything but forgettable. Flight searches. Dozens of them. London, Paris, Barcelona, Rome. Always first-class tickets. Always leaving from Seattle, always returning 8 to 12 days later. Hotel searches. 5-star properties in European capitals. Suites with city views, properties with Michelin-starred restaurants, places that cost more per night than our mortgage payment. And travel agency correspondence. But not for clients. For herself. Detailed itineraries, restaurant reservations, private tour bookings. A complete European vacation planned down to the smallest detail. The trip was scheduled to depart in 6 weeks. She'd been planning this for months. But here's what made my blood run cold. The payment method listed on all the booking confirmations. My credit card. The one I kept in my wallet. The one she'd been studying every morning for the past 6 weeks, memorizing the numbers, the security code, the billing address. She wasn't asking permission. She was stealing the information she needed to fund a luxury vacation while lying to me about where she was going. I sat in my office at 2 a.m. staring at the evidence on my screen. My wife was planning to steal from me. Extensively. Deliberately. With the kind of careful preparation that suggested this wasn't impulse, it was calculated theft. I could have confronted her right then. Could have woken her up, shown her the evidence, demanded an explanation. But 14 years of cybersecurity work had taught me something important. Evidence gathered carefully stands up in court. Evidence gathered in the heat of emotion falls apart. If Jennifer was planning to commit fraud, I needed documentation that would hold up under scrutiny. Not just for legal purposes, but for my own certainty. I needed to know exactly how far she'd go. So I set a trap. The next morning, I called my bank and opened a new account. A checking account completely separate from our joint finances. I transferred exactly $85,000 into it from my savings. Money I'd been setting aside for years, funds Jennifer didn't know existed. Then I ordered a new debit card linked to that account. When it arrived 3 days later, I activated it and placed it in my wallet in the exact position where my regular card usually sat today. Same size, same color, similar design. Easy to mistake for my main card. Easy to steal. But this card was different. This card was connected to fraud monitoring systems that would track every transaction with ruthless precision. GPS coordinates, merchant details, timestamps, IP addresses, device fingerprints. Everything needed to build an airtight case of unauthorized use. I called it my bait card. Jennifer would call it evidence. I also installed additional monitoring software on Jennifer's laptop while she was at work. Keylogger software that recorded every keystroke, every password, every website login. The same tools I used to investigate corporate espionage. Was it legal? In Washington state, monitoring devices you own on your own network exists in a gray area. Was it ethical? I was past caring about ethics. My wife was planning to steal from me. I needed to know everything. The data that software collected over the next 2 weeks was devastating. She'd been researching European travel for 4 months. Not just casual browsing. Detailed research. Best restaurants in Paris, luxury shopping districts in Milan, exclusive wine tours in Tuscany. She'd created Pinterest boards filled with designer handbags, expensive jewelry, luxury hotel suites. She'd also been researching something else. Fraud detection systems. How credit card companies monitor suspicious purchases. What spending patterns trigger alerts. How to avoid detection when using cards internationally. My wife had been studying how to steal from me without getting caught. The wallet searches continued. Every morning while I showered, she'd go through my things. The new card was exactly where the old one had been. She'd memorized the number within 3 days. I know because the keylogger recorded her typing it into her phone's notes app, along with the expiration date and security code. She was ready. The trip was 4 weeks away. And I was ready too. Every system in place, every monitoring tool active, every piece of evidence being automatically logged and timestamped. I want to tell you about a phone call I got 2 weeks before Jennifer's planned departure. A call that changed everything I thought I understood about my wife's betrayal. The call came from Detective Sarah Morrison with the Seattle Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. A department I'd consulted with dozens of times over my career. "Marcus, we need to talk about some unusual activity we've flagged," she said. "Can you come down to the station?" I drove to the precinct thinking they'd discovered something about a client case. But when I walked into Detective Morrison's office, she had a different kind of file open on her desk. "Close the door," she said. I sat down and she slid a document across the desk. Transaction records. Credit card statements. Dozens of charges at high-end retailers, luxury hotels, first-class airline tickets. All charged to accounts belonging to Jennifer's clients. "We've been investigating reports of fraud from several individuals who booked travel through the agency where your wife works," Detective Morrison explained. "High-end clients who discovered unauthorized charges on their cards after working with the agency. The pattern is specific. Always luxury purchases, always in the weeks or months after the client books travel." I stared at the documents. "How many victims?" 7 confirmed so far. Likely more who haven't reported it yet. The total damages exceed $300,000. My hands were shaking. "When did this start?" "About 8 months ago. Right around the time Jennifer took the job at that agency. Everything clicked into place. The job at the luxury travel agency wasn't about better commissions. It was about access. Access to wealthy clients, their credit card information, their travel plans. She wasn't helping them book trips. She was harvesting their financial data." "Does she know you're investigating?" I asked. "Not yet. We've been building the case carefully. But Marcus, there's something else you should know." She pulled out another file. This one had my name on it. "We flagged unusual monitoring activity on your home network. The kind of monitoring that suggested someone was either conducting surveillance or being surveilled. When we traced it back to your IP address, we ran it through our systems. Found the monitoring software you installed." I sat back in my chair. "You think I'm involved? I think you discovered something. I think that's why you're monitoring her. The question is, what do you know?" I told her everything. The wallet searches, the secret email account, the planned European trip funded with my credit card, the bait account I'd set up to track her spending. I showed her the evidence I'd collected, the search histories, the emails, the detailed itineraries. Detective Morrison listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Marcus, you've been documenting your own wife preparing to commit felony fraud. But what you didn't know is that she's already been committing felony fraud for months. Against multiple victims. What happens now?" "Now we coordinate. You continue monitoring her activities. When she uses your card for the European trip, that's when we make our move. But we'll also be moving on the other cases simultaneously. She's not just stealing from you, Marcus. She's running a sophisticated identity theft operation." I drove home in a daze. The woman I'd married wasn't just planning to betray me. She'd been betraying strangers for months. Stealing from clients who trusted her to handle their most sensitive financial information. That night, Jennifer came home late from work. She kissed me on the cheek and said she'd been helping a client plan an anniversary trip to Santorini. I wanted to scream at her. Wanted to demand the truth. But I kept my face neutral and asked about her day. "It was fine," she said. "Exhausting. These clients can be so demanding." The clients she was robbing blind. 3 weeks before the planned departure date, Jennifer's behavior changed. She became more affectionate. Sweeter. Attentive in ways she hadn't been in months. She was managing me. Making sure I wouldn't suspect anything when she suddenly announced a last-minute business trip. I played along. Let her think her strategy was working. The monitoring systems continued collecting data. She'd purchased the flights using my stolen card number. Booked a suite at the Plaza Athénée in Paris, €5,000 per night. Reserved a table at 3 Michelin-starred restaurants. Scheduled a private shopping appointment at Hammy's. She'd also booked a companion for the trip. But it wasn't Diane. It wasn't Claire. It was someone named Ryan Matthews. A name I didn't recognize. The keylogger had captured their messages. Ryan was someone she'd met at the travel agency. A fellow agent who'd been helping her execute the client fraud scheme. They'd been planning this European trip together for months. A romantic getaway funded by my money and her crimes. My wife wasn't just a thief. She was an adulteress. I sat in my office reading their messages and felt something inside me go cold and hard. This wasn't just betrayal. This was calculated, methodical destruction of everything we'd built together. And she was doing it with such casual cruelty that I barely recognized her as the woman I'd married. Detective Morrison called with an update. We've identified 11 victims now. Total damages approaching $450,000. The agency is cooperating with our investigation. They discovered Jennifer had been accessing client files without authorization, photographing credit card information during booking appointments. When will you arrest her? I asked. The day she returns from Europe. We want her to complete the fraud using your card. It'll strengthen the case significantly and demonstrate ongoing criminal intent. 2 weeks before departure, Jennifer started packing. I watched her select outfits, designer dresses I'd never seen before, expensive shoes, lingerie that definitely wasn't purchased for my benefit. Where did you get those clothes? I asked, keeping my tone casual. Sample sale, she said without hesitation. Diane told me about it. Everything was 70% off. The monitoring logs showed she'd purchased them with stolen credit card information. Client funds. She'd been using her victims' money to build a wardrobe for her affair. 1 week before departure, she sat me down at the kitchen table with a serious expression. Babe, I need to tell you something. The agency is sending me on a last-minute business trip. Industry conference in Denver. It's this week, pretty much no notice. I know the timing is terrible. I put on a concerned face. How long? 10 days. I'm so sorry. But it's mandatory for all the senior agents. Could be really good for my career. She was looking directly in my eyes, lying without a trace of hesitation. This was a woman who'd practiced deception until it became natural. That's a long conference, I said. They pack in a lot of training sessions. Plus networking events in the evenings. You know how these corporate things are. I knew exactly how these things were. She'd be in Paris with Ryan, spending my money, while I supposedly believed she was in Denver learning about travel industry trends. Do what you need to do, I said. Your career is important. She squeezed my hand. You're the best husband. I'm so lucky. The performance was remarkable. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed her. The day before her departure, I met with Detective Morrison one final time. The coordinated arrest is scheduled for the day she returns, she explained. Airport security will detain her at customs. We'll have federal agents waiting because of the international scope. But Marcus, you need to prepare yourself. When this happens, it's going to be public. Fraud cases involving international travel and multiple victims make the news. Our life was about to become a spectacle. But she'd made that choice, not me. That evening, Jennifer packed her suitcase. I watched her carefully fold the expensive clothes, pack the designer shoes, add jewelry I'd never seen before. She was humming. Actually humming. Happy about her planned betrayal. I'm going to miss you, she said, kissing me goodbye at the door. 10 days is such a long time. It'll go fast, I said. Before you know it, you'll be back." She drove away and I watched her taillights disappear down our street. Then I went to my office and pulled up the monitoring systems. 30 minutes later, the first alert came through. She'd checked in for her flight. Not to Denver. To Paris. First class. Seat 2A. The seat next to hers was registered to Ryan Matthews. 6 hours later, the flight departed. I watched the tracking data show her phone's GPS signal moving across the country, then over the Atlantic Ocean. My wife was flying to Europe to spend my money on a romantic vacation with her lover. And she had no idea that every moment was being documented by the same systems I used to catch criminals. Let me tell you about the 10 days that followed. 10 days that would destroy Jennifer's entire life. The first alert came at 4:23 a.m. Seattle time, which meant it was 1:23 p.m. in Paris. Transaction on the bait card. €340 at a restaurant near the Champs-Élysées. High-end lunch spot famous for their wine list. I was sitting in my office with coffee, having barely slept. The monitoring system sent the alert to my phone with full transaction details. Merchant name, GPS coordinates, timestamp. I pulled up Google Street View and saw the restaurant, intimate outdoor seating, white tablecloths, exactly the kind of place you take someone you're trying to impress. 2 hours later, another alert. €750 at a luxury boutique. The GPS coordinates placed her on the Rue Saint-Honoré, Paris's most exclusive shopping district. Then another. €1,200 at Hermes. Her private shopping appointment that she'd scheduled months ago. I sat watching the alerts pile up, each one a digital breadcrumb documenting her theft. By the end of day one, she'd spent €8,400 of what she believed was my money. $11,200. She sent me a text that evening. "Missing you already. Denver is beautiful, but I wish you were here. Conference sessions are intense. Going to turn in early. Love you." At that exact moment, the monitoring system showed her phone's GPS coordinates placing her at a rooftop bar overlooking the Seine. Another transaction alert came through. €400. Champagne and appetizers for two. Day 2 was worse. Or better, depending on your perspective. If you were building a criminal case, it was excellent. If you were watching your marriage disintegrate in real time, it was devastating. The alert started at 9 a.m. Paris time. Breakfast at the hotel, €200. Then a private car service to Versailles, €500. Admission and private tour, €800. Lunch at a Michelin-starred restaurant in the palace grounds, €600. She was living like royalty on stolen money. My stolen money and her client's stolen money. Building memories with her lover while telling me she was in conference sessions. That afternoon, she called me. FaceTime. I could see the hotel room behind her, definitely not the conference hotel she described. Luxury furnishings, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view I recognized from the Plaza Athénée website. "Hey babe," she said, her face on my screen. "Just wanted to check in between sessions. How's your day?" Behind her, I could see Ryan's jacket draped over a chair. A room service cart with 2 wine glasses. "Quiet day," I said. "Missing you too. How's the conference?" "Informative but exhausting." She sighed dramatically. "These training sessions run back to back. Barely any time to breathe." As she spoke, another alert came through on my laptop. She'd just charged €2,000 at a jewelry store. While literally on the phone with me, lying about where she was using my card to buy jewelry. Probably for Ryan. "Make sure you're taking care of yourself," I said. "Don't let them work you too hard." "You're sweet." I should go. Next session starts in 10 minutes. Love you. The call ended. 30 seconds later, another alert. Bar charge at the hotel. €300. She'd ordered champagne the moment she hung up. I sat staring at my screens. The woman who'd just told me she loved me had lied 12 times in a 3-minute phone call. Lied about her location, her activities, her companions, her intent. Professional-grade deception delivered with a smile. Detective Morrison called that evening. We're tracking all the same transactions you are, she said. The federal prosecutor is building the case in real time. Every purchase strengthens it. How many charges so far? From your account, 73 separate transactions totaling just over $42,000. But Marcus, we've also identified additional fraudulent charges on client accounts happening simultaneously. She's using multiple stolen cards while she's over there. She brought her whole operation to Europe? Looks that way. We've contacted Interpol and French authorities. They're monitoring but waiting for her return to make the arrest. Harder to prosecute if we detain her overseas. Days 3 through 7 blurred together in a nightmare of alerts and lies. Jennifer called me every evening to tell me about her exhausting conference schedule while the GPS data showed her at luxury restaurants, private wine tastings, shopping districts, and tourist attractions. The spending accelerated. By day 5, she charged over $60,000 to the bait card alone. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, a private yacht tour of the Seine, a helicopter ride to Champagne Country, a €2,000 dinner at Alain Ducasse. She also sent me photos. Carefully curated shots that showed hotel conference rooms, Denver landmarks that she'd pulled from Google Images. Even a selfie with strangers she'd convinced to pose as fellow conference attendees. The level of deception was staggering. But the monitoring system revealed the truth. Every photo's metadata showed GPS coordinates in Paris. The timestamp data proved she was fabricating evidence while simultaneously committing fraud. On day 6, something changed. A new alert pattern emerged. She started making very large purchases. €8,000 at Cartier, $15,000 at Chanel, $22,000 at Louis Vuitton. Detective Morrison called immediately. Marcus, we're seeing unusual behavior. These purchase amounts suggest she knows something's wrong. Criminals often engage in final massive spending when they suspect they're about to be caught. But she doesn't know I'm monitoring her. How would she know? Maybe she doesn't. Or maybe her criminal instincts are telling her to maximize the take while she still can. Either way, the prosecutor wants to move up the arrest timeline. When does she return? Day after tomorrow. Landing at 6:40 p.m. We'll be ready. Jennifer's last full day in Paris was a spending spree that suggested pure desperation or pure greed. The alerts came so fast I could barely process them. 38 separate transactions totaling over $90,000. She bought artwork, designer luggage, expensive watches, luxury cosmetics, rare wine, and a briefcase full of items I couldn't even identify from the merchant descriptions. She was shopping like someone who'd never have another chance. Like someone trying to grab everything before the walls closed in. That evening, she called me for the last time from Paris. She looked tired. Actually tired, not performance tired. I can't wait to come home tomorrow, she said. This has been the longest 10 days. Behind her, I could see suitcases packed with designer shopping bags. Evidence of her crimes literally piled in the background of her lie. I can't wait either, I said. I've missed you. I've missed you too. And babe, I have some amazing things to tell you about what I learned at the conference. Strategies that could really help us finally build the life we want. The life we want. She was still performing. Still pretending. Even as she sat surrounded by $85,000 worth of items purchased with stolen money. "See you tomorrow night," she said. "I love you." "I love you too," I said. The call ended. It was the last time we'd speak as husband and wife. The monitoring system showed her phone powering down for the night at a Paris hotel. In Seattle, I stayed up until 4 a.m. preparing for what came next. I printed transaction logs, compiled evidence files, organized the documentation that would help prosecutors build their case. $85,000 in fraudulent charges. 216 separate transactions. 10 days of systematically stealing while lying about every moment of it. But the evidence went beyond just numbers. The GPS data proved every lie. The timestamps showed she'd been with Ryan the entire time. The metadata from her fake photos revealed the deception. She'd created a digital paper trail that was absolutely damning. Detective Morrison sent me a text at midnight. "Everything is in place. Federal agents will be at the airport tomorrow evening. Airport security has been briefed. She won't make it through customs." I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the woman I'd married 9 years ago. The person I thought I knew. How had she become someone capable of this level of deception? Had she always been this way, just hiding it better? Or had something changed? The next afternoon, I tracked her flight in real time. Air France 364 departed Paris Charles de Gaulle at 10:20 a.m., scheduled to arrive Seattle-Tacoma at 6:40 p.m. local time. 11 hours in the air, probably sleeping off her shopping hangover, completely unaware that federal agents were waiting. At 5:30 p.m., I got in my car and drove to the airport. Detective Morrison had suggested I stay home, but I needed to be there. Needed to see it happen. I parked in the cell phone lot and waited. The monitoring system showed her plane landing at 6:38 p.m. 2 minutes early. She'd be at customs within 30 minutes. At 7:05, my phone rang. "Detective Morrison. She's been detained. Going into secondary screening now. Customs found over $60,000 worth of luxury goods in her luggage. Designer handbags, jewelry, watches, clothing. All purchased with your card. Is Ryan with her?" He was. His being questioned separately. Trying to claim he thought she had legitimate access to the funds. Not going to hold up once we show him the evidence. What happens now? Now we wait for her to make a statement. Then federal agents will take over. Given the international scope and the multiple victims, she's looking at federal charges. This isn't going away, Marcus. I sat in my car in the airport parking lot watching planes land and take off. Somewhere inside that terminal, Jennifer's entire world was collapsing. The luxury vacation was ending in handcuffs. The lies were meeting reality. My phone rang again. Unknown number. "Marcus?" Jennifer's voice was tight, controlled. "There's been a mistake. A terrible mistake. Airport security thinks I've done something wrong with your credit card. Can you come inside and clear this up?" "What kind of mistake?" I asked. "They think I didn't have permission to use your card for the trip. Just tell them you knew I was going to Europe. Tell them you gave me permission. This is just a misunderstanding." I sat in my car listening to her lie even now, even caught red-handed, still trying to manipulate reality. "Jennifer, where did you tell me you were for the last 10 days? Silence on the line. "Where did you tell me you were?" I asked again. "Denver. For a conference." "But Marcus, I can explain. I never gave you permission to use my credit card. I never gave you permission to travel to Europe. I never gave you permission to steal $85,000 to fund a vacation with your lover. The silence stretched out. I could hear her breathing, could imagine her mind racing, trying to find an angle, a story, a way out. How did you? She started. I'm a cybersecurity expert, Jennifer. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you going through my wallet every morning? Did you think I wouldn't monitor our network? Did you think I'd miss you researching fraud detection systems? Marcus, please. I can explain everything. Just come inside and save your explanations for your lawyer. And for Detective Morrison. And for the federal prosecutor who's been building a case against you for months. I hung up, turned off my phone, sat in the parking lot as the sky darkened over Seattle. 45 minutes later, Detective Morrison called my office line. She's been arrested. Federal custody. Charges include wire fraud, identity theft, credit card fraud, and conspiracy. The Ryan Matthews case is separate but related. He's being charged as an accomplice. What's next? Arraignment Monday morning. Federal court downtown. The prosecutor wants to talk to you beforehand about testifying. I drove home to our empty house in Queen Anne. Walked through rooms filled with furniture we'd picked out together, photos from happier times, remnants of a life that no longer existed. In the bedroom, I found her suitcase from the trip. Airport security had returned it after searching. I opened it. Designer shopping bags from Paris. Hermes, Chanel, Cartier, Louis Vuitton. Items worth tens of thousands of dollars, purchased with stolen money, intended for a life she'd been building with someone else. At the bottom of the suitcase, wrapped in tissue paper, I found a small box. Inside was a men's watch. Patek Philippe. $45,000 according to the receipt. Purchased the last day in Paris. A gift for Ryan. Bought with my money. While she told me she loved me. I sat on the floor of our bedroom surrounded by evidence of her betrayal and let myself feel it. The anger, the hurt, the absolute devastation of discovering that 8 years of my life had been shared with a criminal. But I also felt something else. Clarity. The woman I'd married was gone, if she'd ever really existed. The woman in federal custody wasn't my wife. She was a sophisticated thief who'd chosen me as a target and gotten caught. The arraignment was Monday morning at the federal courthouse. I sat in the gallery watching Jennifer be brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. Federal prosecutor David Chen read the charges. Wire fraud, identity theft, credit card fraud involving multiple victims, conspiracy to commit financial crimes, interstate fraud, international money laundering. Each charge carried substantial prison time. Your Honor, Prosecutor Chen said, the defendant engaged in a sophisticated criminal enterprise spanning 8 months. She systematically exploited her position at a luxury travel agency to access client financial information, used that information to fund an extensive fraudulent lifestyle, and attempted to conceal her crimes through elaborate deception. He presented evidence. The transaction logs from my monitoring systems. The stolen credit card information from 11 different victims. The European spending spree documented in real time. The relationship with Ryan Matthews, also under arrest. The defendant poses a significant flight risk, he continued. She demonstrated expertise in international travel, has shown a pattern of deception and fraud, and the evidence suggests she was preparing for additional crimes. She had booked future trips using stolen card information and had accessed client data for dozens of potential victims. Jennifer's court-appointed attorney requested bail. Argued she was a first-time offender, had community ties, no prior record. Prosecutor Chen responded by showing the scope of her crimes. 11 victims identified so far, likely more. Total financial damages exceeding $475,000. Sophisticated methods suggesting long-term criminal planning rather than impulsive behavior. Judge Patricia Hernandez reviewed the evidence. I sat watching her face as she read through the transaction logs, the stolen card information, the documented lies. The court finds that the defendant poses both a flight risk and a danger to the community, Judge Hernandez ruled. The systematic nature of these crimes, the extended time frame, the multiple victims, and the sophisticated methods employed suggest a high likelihood of continued criminal activity if released. Bail is denied pending trial. Jennifer looked back at me as they led her away. I didn't look away, but I didn't wave either. Outside the courthouse, Detective Morrison handed me paperwork. The $85,000 from your bait account will be frozen as evidence but eventually returned. The other victims' funds are being traced and recovery efforts are underway. What about our house? Our joint accounts? She suggested I consult with an attorney about asset protection and divorce proceedings. At this point, protecting myself legally and financially was the priority. I met with a divorce lawyer that afternoon. A woman named Susan Chen who specialized in high-conflict cases. This is unusual, she said, reviewing the evidence I'd brought. Usually, I'm helping clients discover fraud. You documented an entire criminal operation while it was happening. I'm a cybersecurity expert. Documentation is what I do. Well, your documentation makes this divorce straightforward legally. She committed fraud against you, lied about her whereabouts, engaged in an affair. In Washington state, these factors will influence asset division and alimony. I don't want anything from her except to be done with this. I understand. But you need to protect yourself. She may attempt to claim you enticed her into the fraud, or that you're complicit somehow. Criminals often make desperate arguments when cornered. The divorce papers were filed a week later. By then, Jennifer had been transferred to federal detention pending trial. The case moved slowly through the system. Federal fraud cases take time to prosecute. The investigation expanded as more victims were identified. 14, then 17, then 22 people who trusted Jennifer to book their travel and ended up with their financial information stolen. The total damages exceeded $600,000. She hadn't just been stealing from me. She'd been running a criminal enterprise. Ryan Matthews cut a deal. Testified against Jennifer in exchange for reduced charges. Admitted they'd been planning the European trip for 6 months. Admitted he knew the money was stolen. Admitted they'd been stealing from clients together, splitting the proceeds. His testimony destroyed any defense Jennifer might have mounted. She couldn't claim ignorance or accident when her accomplice described their detailed planning sessions. The trial was scheduled for 8 months after her arrest. But 3 weeks before it began, her attorney contacted Prosecutor Chen with a plea offer. Jennifer had finally accepted reality. With the overwhelming evidence and Ryan's testimony, she had no viable defense. She was willing to plead guilty to avoid a lengthy trial. The plea hearing was brief. Jennifer stood before Judge Hernandez and admitted to 15 counts of wire fraud, 8 counts of identity theft, 12 counts of credit card fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. "How do you plead?" Judge Hernandez asked. "Guilty," Jennifer said. Her voice was barely audible. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. I was asked to provide a victim impact statement. I spent 3 days writing and rewriting it, trying to capture the devastation of discovering that my entire marriage had been built on lies. The day of sentencing, I sat in the courtroom as other victims gave their statements. A retired couple whose trip to Italy had been their dream vacation, stolen. A woman who'd saved for years to take her children to Disney World, stolen. A man who'd trusted Jennifer to book his honeymoon, stolen. Each victim described not just financial loss, but the violation of trust. The feeling of being targeted and exploited by someone whose job was to help them. When my turn came, I approached the podium. "Your Honor," I began, "I married Jennifer 9 years ago believing I knew her. I believed we were building a life together based on trust, honesty, and shared values. I was wrong. I described discovering the wallet searches, the secret email account, the planned European trip. I described watching the transaction alerts come in from Paris while she called to tell me about conference sessions in Denver. But what hurt most wasn't just the theft," I continued. "It was the realization that everything had been performance. Every I love you was a lie. Every shared moment was manipulation. She didn't see me as a partner. She saw me as a source of funds." I looked at Jennifer. She was crying. Quiet tears running down her face. "She made choices," I said. "She chose to steal. She chose to lie. She chose to betray not just me, but 22 other people who trusted her. And she did it systematically, carefully, without remorse. Until she got caught." I sat down. The courtroom was silent. Prosecutor Chen presented his sentencing recommendation. 120 months in federal prison. 10 years. Followed by supervised release and restitution to all victims. Jennifer's attorney argued for leniency. Claimed she was remorseful, had taken responsibility, deserved a second chance. Judge Hernandez cut him off. Ms. Jennifer Clark engaged in a sophisticated criminal enterprise that victimized 22 people over 8 months. The planning, the deception, the systematic exploitation of trust, these are not the actions of someone who made a mistake. These are the actions of a career criminal. The sentence is 120 months in federal prison, followed by 60 months supervised release. Restitution is set at $623,000 to be paid to the identified victims. Defendant is remanded to custody. 10 years. Jennifer would be 48 years old when she was released. Our marriage would be long dissolved. The life she'd been trying to build with stolen money would never exist. Ryan Matthews was sentenced separately. 48 months for his role as an accomplice. 4 years for helping her steal from clients. I walked out of the courthouse into a rainy Seattle afternoon. Everything felt different. Lighter somehow. The weight of deception was gone. Over the following months, I rebuilt my life. Sold the house in Queen and, too many memories, too much pain. Moved to a smaller place in Capitol Hill. Focused on my cybersecurity consulting work. The divorce was finalized while Jennifer was in federal prison. I didn't attend the hearing. Just received the paperwork in the mail. Signed, stamped, official. 8 years of marriage dissolved into a legal document. The fraud monitoring systems I'd used to catch Jennifer became the foundation for a new business venture. I started a company specializing in personal financial security, helping people protect themselves from fraud, including fraud by people close to them. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The cybersecurity expert who caught his own wife stealing now helps others detect the same crimes. 6 months after sentencing, I received a letter. Prison mail. Jennifer's handwriting. I almost threw it away. Almost didn't read it. But curiosity won. The letter was 4 pages long. Apologies, explanations, justifications. She claimed she'd been caught up in trying to keep up with Diane's lifestyle. That she'd convinced herself I wouldn't notice small amounts. That it had spiraled out of control. She wrote about Ryan, how the affair had been a mistake, how she'd never meant to hurt me. How she'd been living a fantasy that couldn't last. The letter ended with a request. Could I ever forgive her? Could I understand why she'd done it? I read it twice. Then I put it in a file with all the other evidence from her case. I didn't respond. Forgiveness requires understanding, and I didn't understand how someone could systematically betray the person they'd promised to love. A year after her sentencing, Detective Morrison called with an update. The restitution payments were being processed. Some victims would recover partial losses. Others would likely never see their money again. Your $85,000 has been released from evidence, she said. It'll be back in your account by the end of the week. The money felt different when it returned. Not like savings anymore, but like evidence of a crime that had been committed against me. I donated $20,000 to a non-profit helping fraud victims. Put the rest in investments I could monitor but not touch. Money I'd use someday for something meaningful. Not something stolen, something earned. 2 years after Jennifer's arrest, I met someone new. A forensic accountant named Sarah who understood fraud from a professional perspective. We met at a cybersecurity conference, the same kind of event where I'd met Jennifer years ago. The difference was I approached this relationship differently. More cautiously. More aware of red flags. More willing to verify instead of just trust. Sarah and I talked about everything openly. About my marriage, the fraud, the betrayal. She shared her own history, a previous relationship that had ended when she discovered her partner was embezzling from their employer. We understood each other. The professional expertise that makes you good at catching criminals. The personal devastation of discovering someone you love is one of those criminals. 3 years after Jennifer's sentencing, I was invited to speak at a cybersecurity conference about personal financial security. The same conference where I'd met Jennifer. Different context, different message. I titled my talk "When the Criminal is Your Spouse, Using Professional Tools to Uncover Personal Fraud." I told the story. Not all the details, but enough. How my wife had planned a European vacation using my stolen credit card information. How I'd set up monitoring systems that documented her crimes in real time. How professional expertise became personal protection. The room was packed. People wanted to know how to protect themselves from the people closest to them. After the presentation, a woman approached me. Mid-30s, well-dressed, nervous energy. "My husband has been going through my wallet," she said quietly. "Just like your wife did with yours. I don't know what to do." I gave her the contact information for Detective Morrison and my consulting firm. "Document everything," I told her. "Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is." I wonder sometimes if I could have prevented any of it. If confronting Jennifer earlier would have changed anything. If my suspicions had been wrong and the monitoring had been paranoia instead of protection. But the evidence doesn't lie. The transaction logs, the GPS coordinates, the timestamped alerts. She committed the crimes. She made the choices. I just documented them. Jennifer still has 7 years left on her sentence. I don't follow her case anymore, don't check on her status. That chapter of my life is closed. What I learned from it stays with me, though. The importance of verification over trust. The value of documentation. The reality that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal. I also learned something else. That expertise can be protective. That knowledge is power. That paying attention to small details, the angle of a wallet, the pattern of questions, the subtle changes in behavior, can reveal truths that people work hard to hide. My marriage to Jennifer taught me that trust without verification is vulnerability. But it also taught me that verification without becoming paranoid is possible. That healthy relationships can exist even when you maintain professional awareness. Sarah and I have been together for a year now. We keep separate finances, we're transparent about our spending, we respect each other's privacy while maintaining appropriate boundaries. It's different from my marriage to Jennifer. More honest. More real. Less romantic in the fairy tale sense, but more genuine in every way that matters. Sometimes people ask me if I regret setting up the monitoring systems. If I wish I'd confronted Jennifer directly instead of documenting her crimes. I don't regret it. The evidence saved me. Proved I wasn't crazy, wasn't paranoid, wasn't imagining things. In court, against her lies, the transaction logs told the truth. But more than that, the monitoring taught me something about who Jennifer really was. Not who I hoped she was, not who she pretended to be, but who she actually was when she thought no one was watching. She was a criminal. Sophisticated, methodical, ruthless in her pursuit of the luxury lifestyle she felt entitled to. The European vacation wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was the culmination of months of careful planning and deliberate theft. If I'd confronted her early, she would have lied her way out of it. Convinced me I was overreacting. Manipulated me into dismissing my concerns. The same way she manipulated every victim she stole from. The monitoring systems didn't just catch a criminal. They protected me from being gaslit into accepting a false reality. 5 years after Jennifer's arrest, I'm 43 years old. Running a successful cybersecurity consulting firm. In a healthy relationship with Sarah. Living in a home I actually like instead of one chosen to impress people. The life I have now isn't the life I planned when I married Jennifer. It's smaller in some ways, quieter, less ambitious in the superficial sense. But it's real. Built on truth instead of lies. Funded by work I'm proud of instead of theft. Shared with someone who sees me as a partner instead of a target. Jennifer will be released from federal prison when she's 48 years old. She'll have to pay restitution for the rest of her life. She'll have a criminal record that makes employment difficult. The luxury lifestyle she wanted so desperately will be permanently out of reach. I don't take satisfaction in her punishment. I don't celebrate her imprisonment. But I don't feel guilty about it either. She made choices. She faced consequences. That's justice, not revenge. What I do take satisfaction in is the fact that I trusted my expertise over my emotions. That I documented carefully instead of confronting hastily. That I let evidence speak instead of letting myself be manipulated. In my work helping others protect themselves from personal fraud, I tell them the same thing. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Verify instead of simply believing. Because the hardest crimes to solve are the ones committed by people you love. The hardest truth to accept is that someone you trust could be actively betraying you. The hardest evidence to gather is proof that your life partner is a criminal. But if you have the tools and the knowledge, you can protect yourself. You can uncover the truth. You can survive the betrayal and build something better on the other side. Jennifer thought she was clever. Thought she'd found the perfect target in a cybersecurity expert too in love to notice her crimes. Thought she could steal $85,000, vacation in Paris with her lover, and come home to a marriage built on lies. She was wrong. The monitoring systems caught everything. The transaction logs documented every crime. The GPS coordinates proved every lie. The evidence was so overwhelming that even her own attorney advised her to plead guilty. She thought she was stealing from me. Instead, she was documenting her own crimes with digital precision. If you've enjoyed this story about betrayal, deception, and how professional expertise can protect you from personal fraud, please hit that like button. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Have you ever had to use professional skills to uncover personal betrayal? Subscribe for more stories that explore the intersection of crime, technology, and relationships. Remember, sometimes the person you trust most is the one you need to monitor most carefully. And when your instincts tell you something is wrong, trust them. Because the truth always surfaces eventually. Thanks for listening to my story. Stay safe out there. The end.